everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Made for Marketers, the show where marketing leaders share their smarts in strategy and execution to help you power the customer journey and drive growth. And today I'm really excited talking about a topic that I'm very passionate about, and that is marketing as a lever for growth in a business and really marketing as leadership. And today to share her smarts with us is Rita Harding. Over 25 years experience across the full spectrum of marketing, from brand and advertising and media right through to stakeholder engagement, public affairs, working for the likes of Qantas, New Zealand Tourism, the National Heart Foundation, and of course, most recently as Executive Director for Transport for New South Wales, a mammoth organisation with over 25,000 employees, 13 different agencies across 5 transport modes. I don't think there's much that Rita hasn't done in the marketing sort of ecosystem, so really excited to have her here today to talk about this really kind of big and challenging topic. Thanks for joining us, Rita.
Thanks, Janine. It sounds like a big topic as well.
Well, I know it's something that I often think about. I'm pretty passionate about the idea of marketing being a strategic sort of lever in business as opposed to a tactical lever. And I know that's something that you're pretty passionate about as well today. So yeah, I think, it's kind of time we sort of, brought this conversation to the fore, and I thought, who better a person to kind of contribute to the discussion than you. So really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So tell me, one of the things that we think about around this topic is the fact that marketing has changed so much, particularly over the last decade with the growth in digital and the explosion of various channels. And something that I know I think about a fair bit is really that idea that marketing has almost been relegated back to the promotion P, if you like, of the 4 Ps, and really kind of sitting in that comms department. What are your thoughts on that, and why do you think that has changed? Do you think that shift is taking place, or is it just my perception?
No, I think your perception, I think it's real. And I think it's also, there is a perception even around professionals that shift is happening. I think there's a few things to note about it. We, in terms of our training and education, has very much always been about 4 Ps. And I know there were the 5 Rs and the whole bunch, but really, when you think about it, 4 Ps of marketing: product, price, placement, and promotion. And I think in smaller organisations and commercial organisations, that alignment is a lot closer. In bigger organisations, they're further apart. And so I think historically, marketers have ended up concentrating more on the storytelling of our function and the engagement with the customer. And so we've always been the gatekeepers of understanding who the customer is, translating the business story in our products or behaviour change, which has been my sort of specialty in social change, to interface with citizens, customers, to do things. And I think as a result, with digital exploding in the last 15 years, but really seismic shifts and changes in the last, 5 to 7, I think it's got a lot more complicated to actually reach our audiences, get new customers, talk to our existing customers. And there's been that focus on personalisation and engagement. And I think what's happened by default is that our sort of the promotional end, which used to be broadcast and centred on advertising, still complicated, but not anywhere near as complicated as delivering stories in this day and age, has meant we've had to focus more on the promotional end because it's got a lot more complicated. And I think as a result, we haven't been very good at looking at it as a system, because I don't think the technology has been delivered to us as a system. And what I mean by that is we've iterated on the addition of new tools. So, automated email, for example. We're less about data, but I haven't worked in an organisation yet, respect to all the ones I have, that truly have been able to crack the data nut in order to truly bring insights that are real time, that help to influence more agile, timely marketing. So I think by default, Janine, we've ended up focusing more on the P because it's got a lot more complicated. And as a result, we've also ended up getting more tactical because we're getting our heads around the technology and the tools.
And I think that's a really good point, because one, particularly I think as marketing technology, MarTech has kind of grown, and certainly say 5 years ago when it really, a lot of organisations really started to kind of focus on what the technology could actually deliver in terms of customer experience or single view of customer or your personalisation and all of those elements. I think there was a almost a move to say, well, let's bring in the technology to solve our problems. But of course, technology is a tool to help you execute a strategy. And it's about saying, well, which foot do we put forward, and not forgetting that actually as marketers, our role is to first and foremost develop the strategy, understand all of the inputs that we have around us, whether they're, external, environmental, customer feedback, behavioral data, etc., and then use the technology and mold that technology in a way that's going to help deliver. So I think that technology piece is really important, because it's almost like it's become not a distraction. That's not that, because it's very, it's critical, it's important, but in some ways it's taken precedence almost above the kind of the smarts, if you like, or the strategic thinking, the insight, the data to help inform how that technology needs to be executed.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think we've lost the art of realizing we are great strategists.
Yes.
And doing the thinking up front. I know in organisations, I've worked with in lots of, certainly for Transport for New South Wales, we almost acted like an we were an internal service provider. I always used to say we were a partner, because we would help to crack policy initiatives that needed to be developed, or Opal, for example, the launch of Opal as a technology solution, which had a big acquisition requirement and retention requirement. And yet the assumption was, it's great technology, it's a new system, people will just adopt it. And again, playing that back around why that wouldn't necessarily be the case, or how do we retain it. So I think you're spot on. I think we as marketers need to understand we are good strategists, and unless we're leading that strategy development, and even engaging with other parts of the business, because I think, as we've been more focused on parts of marketing, other parts of the business, I think this has happened at a board level. I think boards have struggled to then understand the value perhaps that we're bringing. And I think they've started to hive off areas that are now known as customer experience, which then have given rise to chief customer officers. So I think we're also seeing us losing parts of the value creation that we used to be able to articulate how to do that. So I think it's up to us to seize the day, get back in charge, look at a system, and then execute it beautifully.
Yeah, and that's I think you're spot on there. And the role of marketer, which is what this kind of topic is about, is how does marketing drive business leadership and its role in business leadership. And I think thinking beyond the promotional communications department, as important as that is and as vast as that is today, we have to think about the other levers, I suppose, at our disposal, and how we kind of maneuver those levers in order to position growth. And I think this kind of leads on to another question is, how do we then position marketing as a function to have a valid seat at that leadership table, and what are we bringing to that discussion in that picture? And we'll get on to marketers as potential board members. Obviously you're a board, you've been a board member for a number of years now, and so I know a lot of marketers are thinking about that, and what their role on a board might look like. And we'll get to that in a little bit, but I think it is really critical to think about, marketing's role in terms of driving business strategy. So not just marketing strategy, but actually the contribution to business strategy and business direction, and therefore business growth.
Look, and I think in terms of the business growth aspect, I think one of the critical things is we still need to think, and again, I'm going to put up my hand, I haven't worked in a standard commercial organisation. So statutory authorities, profit and loss, yes, responsibility, revenue generation, etc. But there's always been another side of it in terms of not just driving revenue, customer acquisition and then profit. There's always in my line of work been a mutual requirement in terms of the social benefit that we bring. So more traditionally around that sort of purpose role that we play as organisations and marketers within those kinds of organisations. Ironically, I think Janine, it's become interesting because I think when we were marketers and we said, well, we actually help to drive revenue and drive profitability within companies. I think as the world's got more complicated and people expect more of us, both customers, stakeholders and community, they expect more of us as organisations. I think our role has started to shift a little bit. And as a result of that, we're more responsible for driving purpose-based marketing stories. And it's coincided with storytelling. So we've said, we put our hand up and said, well, look, guys, we'll be the ones that interface with our customers on this space, and we'll encourage personalisation and we'll monitor how people share stories of our brand back. And I think as a result of that, we've forgotten to list the goals that we're accountable and metrics and measures that are going to prove our success. Because I think one of the great things about marketers is we put our hand up a lot to solve business problems in our organisations, but we forget that we've still got a core role. And so I think for commercial entities, unless we're adding to revenue, profitability, customer retention, we've got an issue. We've got to do the other stuff as well. And I think we've got to be better at articulating those goals, putting them in our strategic plan, making sure that the business knows that's what our responsibilities are, and goddamn measuring them and then telling our story of success.
Absolutely. Market the marketing. But you're right about that measurement piece and sort of taking accountability, I suppose, for the things that we're going to deliver and how we're going to deliver them. Moving on slightly to another point around this idea of identity, and you've talked about this, or we've talked about this, in the past, in the sense that, marketing or marketers are under some sort of identity crisis at the moment. Do you want to kind of give us a bit of background on that, and what do you mean by that? And I suppose how can we get back our identity?
Look, I think I'm going to pay tribute to Darren Woolley, who is way more articulate in this space. He's well known in marketing circles, certainly in Sydney, in terms of championing this. And all you need to do is look up marketing identity crisis on the internet, and you will see pages and pages of people commenting on this. I think what's happening at the moment is marketing just got more complicated. The world got more complicated. And as a result, I think there was a push in terms of, what we were talking about before, Janine. As parts of our remit got more complex, I think, for example, product has sat quite often with the product area. And I think what ended up happening is that got carved off from under the umbrella of marketing. It became product development, innovation. And I think it coincided with the time where products increasingly are being moved into the technology space. And so in some ways, marketers almost needed to let that part go, because technology was driving those product innovations, and we're not IT people. And so I think that part got hyped off. Then I think pricing has been always a place where people fight over it, and I think finance kind of own it. And as a result, I think what's ended up happening is parts of our remit that sat under our umbrella have kind of gone to more specialist kind of areas. Parts of what we used to manage, and if I put this term control, we've started to lose. Now, I think that's driven the identity crisis, but I don't think we should obsess about it. I think what we've got to realise is that we need to if those things are moving, then we need to be better at collaborating. And what I think we've got to be clear about is we need to state to ourselves, we own the customer within our organisation. We champion them in boardrooms. We champion them in go-to-market meetings. We should know them back to front. I think if we were better at owning that and stating that, then I think we would not have the identity crisis that we have.
Right.
And, it's an interesting one. And look, I've struggled as well. I think you and I have had a conversation about this where, you now see chief customer officers really are the people that used to be the traditional chief marketer.
Yeah, that's right. And there's definitely a shift across various industries as well. People are taking, and backflips happening left, right, and centre around what, not only what we call marketing, what we call heads of marketing, what we call CMOs, etc. But I think the point you made there around collaboration is really critical. And I know, I mean, I've been out of, I grew up in corporate world, if you like, and as an in-house marketer before starting the agency, obviously. And so I know as an internal marketer, God, 70-80% of your role is operations. It's the, marketing is the glue that should and bring different parts of the business together in order to take something to market.
Yeah.
And the, which is part of the reason why obviously we rely on so many different partners to help us actually then execute, but that collaboration piece is really critical. And for a marketer to be effective, I think, as a potential business leader, you need to understand how the different parts of the business actually contribute to whatever it is you're trying to put out in market, whether it's a new product, a new service, whether that has a social good purpose or whether it's a pure commercial play. Being able to understand the agendas of the different parts of the business, translate what they need, bring them to the table, pull something together that delivers for the business, that often has fallen on the marketer to do. And rally the troops to then execute that in market. And I think, part of the reason that I'm so passionate about it is that I know that how critical a marketer's role internally in terms of operational delivery of a new proposition to market is. And so I think, I think you're right about that collaboration piece, building that trust and, that trust and credibility internally, being able to bring the partners together to help execute externally across all of the various specialties that now marketing has to cover. I think that's how we start to maybe, elevate marketing again and give it the kind of the voice and the respect I think that it deserves.
And Janine, I think it also coincides with a couple of other things. Like, I think we have lost the art of training up our teams to think strategically about marketing, because it's actually quite demanding. And quite often, even if you just go back to some basic principles about go-to-market planning, we're the ones that need to understand each of those stages of go-to-market. Yes. Now, others can contribute to them, but I think, and I mean no disrespect, I've had wonderful teams who have just hopefully all flourished. Yeah. But some people have said to me, oh my Lord, marketing is exhausting. Why do we have to do the thinking for them? And while I'm saying other people have thought that, occasionally I think that as well. It's like, oh my Lord, this is exhausting. Yeah. Because you have to be responsible for more than what perhaps you're executionally seen to be delivering.
Absolutely.
And I think we've just got to own that space if we want to, again, have fulfilling great careers. Otherwise, we are never going to get back to leading the function, and we're just going to be doing the function.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. I mean, even now as a service provider, I suppose on the agency side, it's interesting because you're sort of outside looking in, and you understand what the nuances and the operational challenges are in a business because sort of been there, done that. The insight that we can sort of now bring to the table is, guys, we're not here just to solve your promotional, communication challenges. We know that actually for this to succeed, it's got to work operationally. You've got to engage sales, you've got to engage distribution, you've got to engage all these other departments. And this is how we think we can make the piece work so that actually not only just delivers a great comms campaign, but actually it works for the business, because that's so important.
Yes, you're spot on. You are spot on.
Yeah.
And I think, even in these uncertain times, having people in your camp who can help you to do that, coach you through it, engage you in it. And I find certainly in terms of, I've had agency experience and then internal.
Yeah.
It is great to get good talent from outside to give you a fresh perspective.
Absolutely.
And to empower them to tell you stuff that you kind of know in your gut, but you're not prepared to say out loud.
Yeah.
And it just really helps enormously, to your point, add value to what we're doing.
Absolutely. And actually, one of the interesting things that I learnt in making the leap, if you like, across the fence is suddenly and I know this frustrates marketers to no end, it used to frustrate me, is that, marketers can sort of, tell their executive team, they can go blue in the face telling them something, and sometimes it almost just needs an external person to come in and say the same thing, and suddenly the penny drops or the message is heard. And I mean, that's just a frustrating reality sometimes in business, is that it does take an external point of view and perspective to kind of shape, I suppose, a conversation that the executive team consider and can think about and say, oh, actually, I see that point of view, and bring to the table the perspective, not just of your own organisation, but actually a broader sector or industry or multiple businesses. So I agree. I think having both perspectives, so partnering with people who can, be quite, I guess, truthful and blunt and have your best interests at heart, and bring to the table what's actually happening at the coalface and in the market, and then having those internal specialists who really understand how the business operates and what's going to work for the business. Bringing those together is really the perfect blend. So I want to move on to this, topic. I think we've kind of touched on it a little bit in terms of marketing as leaders and really making that leap, whether it's in executive roles in a business or even non-executive board members. Often, obviously, when you think about boards and the criteria for being a board, it's very heavily weighed towards, the legal and finance sort of guys and professions. I'm interested in your perspective on how marketers can, what role do they play in a board, and how, if marketers have that ambition to one day be a board member, what skills can they bring to the table? How can they shape themselves? How do they harness their unique capability so that it is attractive? It's an attractive asset.
So, Janine, this is again another interesting one. So, my board career started in not-for-profits and more social orientated organisations. So, I think one of the critical things is that if you see that towards the horizon of your career, you want to do more boards, and perhaps that they will help give you some pocket money at least. I think what people should do is try their hand to get onto a not-for-profit board.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is you won't be bringing your marketing skills per se to those boards, but you'll be learning around the importance of strategy at a board table and the importance of governance critically. And then you'll start to bring your kind of functional expertise to the board, and particularly it can be around reputation management, dare I say, funding, fundraising. Again, how do you reach people to get more money in? So my view is you should start early if you've got an interest in it, and I think that if you try it out in those not-for-profit kind of boards, I think it will tell you whether you really want to have a board later in life, a board position later in life.
Fair point. Yeah.
And if you do want that, then I think you've got to start to invest in your own capability. So you have to, I think, like anything in your own career, you should do further your academic engagement. Certainly, as you and I both know, the AICD organisation, Australian Institute of Company Directors, offer fabulous courses. They're not the cheapest, but they're well worth the investment. And so I think my learning has been you've got to invest in it without it kind of turning a buck for you. So you've got to be really ready for it. But I think in terms of marketing, I think you do have to focus when you are sitting around a board table. And I've sat more not on a pure P&L board or any ASX listed. They have been statutory authority.
Yep.
So, more of a government focus, delivering services, but accountable in terms of, revenue and profits, etc. And I think one of the critical things is when you're sitting around that board, you have to remove yourself. You are not operational.
Yeah.
It's
hard for marketers, I imagine.
Well, that is hard, but importantly, while we're talking about strategy, you've got to helicopter up and question at a strategic level. So you can't be in the weeds you've got to be saying, well, what is it about, the customer? And that's one of the critical things that I see in boards that boards struggle with at the moment. Yeah. And if, as marketers, you can bring that insight, and what I mean by this, sorry, Janine, is in my experience, friends who sit on, pointy commercial boards,
Yep.
what they say often is that they are so far removed from their customer base, they struggle with some
Right.
business decisions.
Yep.
And by the time it gets to the board level, quite often it's very filtered through the functional operational areas. I think one of the critical things that, if in thinking what you would bring to a board as a marketer is your understanding, excuse my expression, of calling the bullshit in terms of when you're presented with customer information and data, etc. And that you would be able to then turn that constructively into a discussion that would help to drive the business forward. So that's where I think, apart from you've got to understand your financials, as you know, you have to get your head, and you need to know governance in terms of a board role. And you probably have to get used to, which I think is what we all do when we get to a more senior level, you are less in the doing, right? And let's be honest, lots of marketers still love to do. I put up my hand occasionally just get my hand in, but you've got to pull yourself back to make sure that you're driving the strategy. And if you can balance those things, I think you're set for, at least getting an interview for a board position.
Okay, great. And do you think, just on that front, that the market is opening up more for marketers in boards, whereas it once was, really quite heavily, I mean, it probably still is actually focused on that finance and legal background? I think I wonder, I suppose, with the growth of customer as a real kind of customer experience as a real kind of, strategic objective for many organisations, large and small, actually that's probably opening up a wedge for marketers to put their hand up and say, I can contribute in a really meaningful way.
I think you are spot on. And I in some of the ads that I see for board roles, increasingly you will see marketing, customer experience. Sometimes it's tied to digital and transformation in that space. But yes, to your point, I think there are more opportunities for us to put up our hand and give it a go and contribute.
Well, thank you so much, Rita. I could talk on this topic all day, actually, but we don't have all day, sadly. But I really, really appreciate your time and, sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. But before we let you go, it's time for our fun little segment called Skip or Play. We're going to throw out some kind of random content pieces or content creators at you, and we'll ask you, Rita, if you would like to skip or play.
Okay.
Ready?
Ready.
Queen.
Skip.
The Lion King.
Play.
Seth Godin.
Play.
The Gruen Transfer.
Play.
Play. Becoming. The book by Michelle Obama.
Haven't read it. Skip.
Okay. You should read it.
Yes.
Eurovision.
You should.
Eurovision.
Love. Play.
The Drum.
Love. Play.
Okay. Jerry Seinfeld.
Play.
Play. Little Britain.
Play.
Yep, cool. And Keith Urban.
Skip.
So thank you so much. Again, really, really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to sort of spend with us and share your thoughts. And for those who want to kind of get in touch or reach you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Look, it can be found on LinkedIn. So usually I find that's the easiest way. If you want to send me a message via LinkedIn, I'm more than happy to come back to you and engage. It'd be great.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And for everyone out there, if you like this episode and you want to see more, please do like it, share it, leave any comments you have in the comments field. Look out for our next episode, ready to drop in about a fortnight. Until then, keep marketing.